Trucker Dump, episode 189. Well, news was super light last week, but it's back with a vengeance, which means I'm pretty sure this week's show is going to be extra long. So strap in and keep your cup of coffee handy so you don't doze off, okay? News this week includes American Trucking Association CEO discussing trucking's biggest issues with Congress. Unfortunately, positive drug tests were up in 2022. There's lots of states making new road rules. I'll point you to an article that will give you the best chance to get that next trucking job you're after. And I'll tell you about what might possibly be the world's worst trucker. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to news. Listener feedback topics this week includes roundabouts, Canadian vaccine mandates, and a lengthy discussion about truck driving schools. And you know, it seems only right that someone would want to point out how bad I talk. All right, since we got a mega show, let's get on with it.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by abouttruckdriving.com, resources that help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
Hey, Trucker Dumpers, how is the weather treating you out there? You know, I took off last Sunday night, which was weird. I normally, don't take off until Monday night, but I had an opportunity to run Sunday, and I thought, well, I knew there was some weather expected to come in on Monday, and I looked at the Weather Channel app on my phone, and it showed no precipitation pretty much all the way across Missouri. So I thought, great, that's awesome. So I take off, and, well, for the first, 3 or 4 hours, I ran in a freezing drizzle that was on the road, forming on the road, icy, very slick, and, well, so much for trying to beat the rush, right? Oh, that sucks. We've been hearing about these pileups out in Wyoming and somewhere else. I can't remember where. Don't remember where that was, but that big one in Wyoming. Hope nobody was tracked in that one. That's bad. Just be careful out there. This time of year, just don't let yourself be pushed into driving in any conditions you are not comfortable with. We got drivers here at my company that have been driving for 40 years. They walked out the other night of one of the hotels, walked out in the parking lot, looked around, slid across the parking lot on their feet and said, nope, went right back to the hotel. Just pride is not an issue here. Just do what you need to do to deliver the load safely and don't let a trucking company push you in anything. Okay, so now you're thinking, okay, who's the bozo giving advice? For those of you who don't know, my name is Todd McCann. I have been doing this podcast since 2012, so I am an authority on all trucking subjects. No, that's totally wrong. I'm not. I don't know anything about owner operating. I don't know anything, very little about flatbedding, reefers. Basically, I've just pulled van trailers all my life, been a company driver. So never owned my own business or anything like that. Well, unless you count this little podcast as a business, which, well, from the money I make from it, I'd say it's not a business. It's kind of a side hustle. Side hustle. There you go, Dave. I left a blooper in for you. Side hustle. Wow. So anyway, like I was saying, my name's Todd McCann. I am a trucker, been a trucker for 25 years. And I haven't just been driving that whole time. Like I said, started this podcast and this blog, and I wrote 2 trucking ebooks. One is called How to Find a Great Truck Driving Job, and the other is called Trucking Life. Trucking Life includes a 9.25 hour audiobook. Sometimes that's a little hard to download sometimes, as David J. Taylor was telling me the other day in the Trucker Dump Slack group, hey, I'm having trouble getting that audio downloaded. Sometimes that is a trick on an iPhone, but if you ever have issues with that, just write me an email, truckerdump@gmail.com, and I'll help you get that figured out. Works pretty well on an Android phone, but iPhone, something about that just, Anyway, we'll work that out there, David. So both of those books are available on abouttruckdriving.com, which is my website. Right now I'm running a 50% off deal, so you can get both of those books for $9.99. Like I say, David purchased those books recently, and Daniel purchased them. That's pretty awesome. Although when Daniel purchased it, I noticed the fee was very high for PayPal, like 10%, which is weird. They usually charge like 3% plus a 30-cent charge or something like that. It's, it's not a lot, but boy, they took 10% of my money. So I guess PayPal is going to get a call because, it's only $1, right? $9.99. It's only like 99 cents. But, and I don't have a lot of sales of these things anyway, so it doesn't matter. But ultimately, what if I get a big payment through an advertiser or something one of these days when I get advertisers back and, they charge me 10%? Yowza. I better get that straightened out. Like you care one bit. How many things on this podcast do I tell you that you don't care one little bit about? Probably a lot. So again, you can get both of those books with the combo pack on abouttruckdriving.com, or you can just go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you get your ebooks, and you can buy each one of those individually. But I don't know why you would pay for 2 books full price if you can get 2 books half price. But that's just me. So in completely unrelated news, I have a little story to tell you, and it's a warning. Watch your DOT physical. And your driver's license for that matter. But this little incident involves my DOT physical. So here I am out on the road, and all of a sudden I get a text from the evil overlord, and she's sending me a picture from the Department of Revenue in Missouri saying, hey, we don't have a DOT physical on file for you. And I'm like, huh? I know I've been checking that recently, and I know that because we've had 2 of our senior drivers forget, and they got nailed. See, the thing is, our company used to remind us of this in advance, and for some reason, they've stopped doing it. And, we were used to it for so many years that, like most companies will let you know that your DOT is about ready to expire to go get that taken care of. But like I said, for some reason, they've stopped doing it. It's nabbed some senior drivers and now me. So here I am out on the road, which, of course, it is illegal to drive without a DOT physical, but well, I was naughty. What am I going to say? Because what happens with my company is they shut you down and they put you in with another driver, and you get to be given a ride home, and where you can take care of it. But I just thought, when I figured it out, I was about 300 miles from the house. I was in St. Louis, and I just kind of told a white lie, a lie of omission. I just called up dispatch and said, hey, I don't normally ask to get home during the middle of the week, but I had something that I should have taken care of, and I forgot that I had this thing to do, and I just need to get home if that's at all possible. So that's pretty vague, right? But it wasn't a lie exactly. It was something I needed to do, and I had forgotten about it. So anyway, I got very lucky. Dispatcher, thankfully, I don't hardly ever ask for anything extra here. So when I ask for it, she didn't have anything moving that way. So she just bobtailed me 316 miles home. So can't complain about that. So anyway, got that all taken care of. Down to the DMV, $2, and done deal. Back on the road. But this is just a reminder right now, stop what you're doing, unless you're driving, of course, but make a note to yourself to check your DOT physical date and check your driver's license date. Now, the DOT physical is not normally that big of a deal. You figure it out, you go in, you get it done. No big deal. Driver's license, totally different thing. Hopefully your state gives you advance warning on this, because if you've got a hazmat or you need a TWIC card or anything like that, you need to get a jump on this, a couple of months at least. I wouldn't be pushing it to the last minute, as I say, since I just pushed it to the last minute. But, I'd have swore when those other 2 drivers got nailed for this, and we were poking fun at them, because they were senior drivers who should have known better. And, I swore to myself that I went to my phone and I made an alert like a month in advance not to mess any of this up. And I guess I never did. So anyway, I've downloaded a new app, and I'm starting a new regiment where I am putting reminders in an app called DUE, D-U-E. Looks like it's going to work okay. We'll see. Okay, now to some actual podcast talk here. Hey, I realized I might have sounded a bit insane in the last episode because I said, I don't know if you noticed it or not, but the podcast usually comes out Saturday afternoon, but it came out early Sunday morning, like 1 o'clock in the morning on Sunday morning. And I said in the podcast that I got home earlier than normal on a Saturday, and that's why the podcast was late. And I listened back to that and thought, well, that probably confused a lot of people. If you even thought about it, honestly, you probably went right over your head. But anyway, what had happened is I got home super early, and I was planning. I had even told the evil overlord, hey, I got to finish this podcast as soon as I get in. It was like 6 or 7 in the morning when I got in, and she said, no problem. But then when I got in, she was actually still awake, and she just said, screw the podcast, take a shower, get in bed. We're all going to get up at the same time this evening. And I was like, okay, well, there goes that. So, got up out of bed that night and, got to work on the podcast while her and her mom ran into town, did some errands, and yeah. Then she brought me home soggy Taco Bell. How cool is that? You know why? Because she got her mom addicted to Pokemon Go. That's why. They got my tacos and just went driving around doing some Pokemoning. Oh, dear God. So anyway, just want to let you know that I'm not completely insane. Well, kind of, but you get the gist of it. All right. Now, let's start out the news segment a little different this time. So if you are a regular listener of the podcast, you know how often I am confused about news stories. So I'm going to start out with one of those, but I'm going to lead into it with Cece's second audio comment. This is about 5 minutes long, but it is relevant to the conversation. So here we go. Let's play the little sound and then get on with Cece.
Okay, now for the actual feedback part. I really liked your interview with Dave Dine. Dave Dean? I don't actually remember how to say his name.
Dine
Sorry,
is
Dave.
correct.
And I love the idea of adding truck driving classes to high schools, or at least some exposure to the trucking industry.
For the record, Cece is talking about the interview I did with Dave Dine from Next Gen Trucking. That was episode 158. I'll put a link in the show notes to that. Anyway, back to it.
I've always found it a little weird that people often rely on private CDL schools to get trained to drive semi-trucks. Very few other blue-collar jobs train like this. Usually they utilize an apprenticeship model, especially the union jobs. Or people take classes at a community or technical college with a specific trade in mind. I know many people can and do go to community college to get CDL training, like yourself and the EVA Overlord. But during my research, it seemed like people often recommended prospective drivers look at private schools first, and I don't know how I feel about that. Personally, I think private CDL schooling cuts out a lot of poor people who would like to get into trucking, but either can't afford private tuition or they can't take the time off of their schedule to attend the school full-time without getting paid. Plus, private schools have the added pressure to get students in and out relatively quickly. More classes per year, more students, more money. And if a student isn't cut out for trucking, they may not want to be as harsh on them since they're paying to be there, and they don't want to lose their money or have them complain to the school about other people or worse online. So that's why I went with company-sponsored training, which I know you personally don't recommend to people on your podcast, but I did about a month of research before deciding on a company to go with and what kind of account and pay that I wanted, so that way I wouldn't get stuck in a bad situation. That's actually how I found your podcast. I was doing some research on what route to take to get into trucking, and I just came upon your podcast and eventually your website.
Cool.
I feel like company-sponsored training should be considered a little more often than it is, since it's basically trucking's version of doing an apprenticeship, well, at least as long as you make sure that you choose good training and you get paid while you learn. And I also liked that it gave me a guaranteed job going into all of it, and I didn't have to worry about only getting trained to pass the CDL test and not actually how to drive a truck. Plus, I found it much easier to find out online what was offered at different companies' training programs and compare like people's experiences of them, whereas it was difficult to just search, a random CDL school that has a much less reach and much less widespread recognition.
That is very true.
Now, yes, I know certain company-sponsored programs will leave a lot to be desired. Believe me, I looked and found some of those in my research.
Mm-hmm.
But this is not always the case. I can speak from my own experience that my company offered excellent training, and they didn't even really focus on the CDL testing until the very last week. They gave us free road atlases and training. Yes, there's still some people teaching map reading in 2022.
Woohoo!
I guess 2023 now, but for me it was 2022. And my OTR trainer was a very experienced driver. He had started driving in the 90s, and he showed me a lot of stuff that you often mention on your podcast that rookie drivers don't even really know about, like fueling etiquette. He talked about the turtle racing. He even explained the dragonfly loads going up and down the hills. They told us about watching your tandems to make sure they reach the apex of the curve before closing off a turn. So all these kind of really detailed things that usually you have to just pick up as you learn how to drive. So I ended up learning all of this in an environment where I got paid to learn it. So that was really kind of excellent. I was getting paid to get this excellent education. So while yes, there are definitely horrible companies out there who they only treat their students like teams, and and it's true that companies do require you to commit to driving to them for a certain amount of time. I feel like as long as you do your research about what to expect going in, it can be a very good option. And in my case, even if I had ended up hating the company I was with, I decided, they didn't represent themselves fairly, or it just wasn't what I was looking for. They only asked for 9 months of driving with them. And if I left before that, they only wanted about $2,000, which is still less than what every driving school near me wanted to charge for classes, even a local community college. So, and I'm definitely trying to avoid more student debt. So that was a huge plus. So even if somehow my research had been inaccurate and I wanted to leave, it wasn't like I was, going to have to pay like $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, which some companies do charge that much. So you got to really be careful. But company training aside, I still think there should be more options out there for people who can't afford private school, or just for whatever reason want to avoid private schools. Maybe it makes me think about C. Lopez that you talked about in episode 147, where he paid out of pocket for private school, and he still had to end up basically teaching himself by watching YouTube and making his own simulator, which is kind of awesome that he made his own simulator, but you definitely don't want to do that if you've paid somebody else to teach you how to drive. So the type of thing that Dave is doing with the high school is super important, in my opinion, to help give people more options to try to get into trucking, especially younger people who, they don't have a lot of money anyways, usually. Hopefully the new entry-level driver training type of stuff will curb some of the stuff that C. Lopez ended up having to deal with, but, who knows? Scammers will be scamming, and that's kind of just true for any industry. So we'll see what happens going forward with different types of scam like schools, CDL schools, the farms that don't really train people how to drive. They just want their money.
Okay, Cece, thank you for sending in this audio comment, and that sets us up nicely for the first news story. But before I get there, let me also mention the article the podcast she was talking about with Driver C was episode 147, Be Careful Choosing a Truck Driving School. That was a nightmare of a situation. So go and check that one out if you're interested. Link in the show notes to that one. But let me clarify something here that Cece said, just so everyone knows what my stance is on this. Yes, I have said in the past that I think a private school is probably the best option, and that is simply because you are leaving yourself more options. You're not tied to one company. But as long as you do the research on the company that is sponsoring the school that you're thinking about going to, and you're okay with that, and you're okay with the contract and working for them for a while, I've got no problem with it whatsoever. You are 100% correct. It's a nice, easy way to get into that. So to sum up, I would just say, if you want to get into truck driving school, get into truck driving school however you need to do it. Just be smart about it. And if you got any questions about any prospective school or anything like that, send me an email at truckerdump@gmail.com and do your research like Cece did. She's very happy where she's at, and that's because she researched. So like I said before, that sets up this first news story. Now, it is going to seem like I am shilling for this company, and I am not, because, well, they have their problems for sure from what we've been hearing about in the news. But I just wanted to let you guys know about this because it's a really good deal. I was surprised at it, honestly, and I had to do some further research. So what am I talking about here? Found this story on truckersnews.com. Yellow meets its goal of graduating 1,000 new CDL holders during 2022. So if you remember correctly, we talked about Yellow starting these new driving academies in 2022, and their goal was to hit 1,000 drivers. And they got that just before the end of the year. So these schools, it says here, are located across 21 locations across 16 states. And you may be thinking, what's so special about this driving school, and why am I even talking about it? Because I don't normally talk about specific driving schools. But this one, well, down here in the article, I read something and I thought, yeah, that can't be right. But, well, it is. It says here, Yellow's driving academies are tuition free for all participants, and student apprentices are paid an hourly wage for their work throughout the program. Okay. Now I thought, okay, now is that one of these things where, like so many of these companies, probably like what CC went through and what driver Chris Mack used to train, where they would have a new student, they would come in, they would just hop in their truck and start doing the job immediately and get the on-the-job training, and they're getting paid to do that work. Okay, well, that's one of those situations where CC was talking about how, that really lends itself to a trainer using a trainee as a team driver and not actually teaching the driver anything. Now, I think some of these new regulations that went into effect this past year of February 7th, I think of this past year with the new school regulations and CDL requirements and all that stuff, I think that's going to eliminate some of that. But in the past, it's always been the problem with these paid on the job things. So I went looking at this and guess what? It's not. If you go down in this article, I went over to Yellow's website and found out more about it. And in that I'll put all links to all this stuff in the show notes, by the way, so it's nice and easy. Like I said, I'm not getting paid for anything like, setting you up for a referral fee or anything like it. This is just a really good deal for people like Cece was saying. If you're broke and you need to get to school, this might be a good option as a company paid school. Well, like I said, this one is paid, but it's not just paid. It is, like I said, I couldn't believe it. There's no deal on this one. Like, you have to stay. Like Cece said, she had to stay with her company for 9 months. I couldn't believe that. But after doing some research, sure enough, I don't know why that is or how that is. It does say here in the article that the U.S. Department of Labor is working with Yellow for these driving academies. So I'm guessing the government is paying them as part of this infrastructure package or something that came out trying to get more truck drivers into the industry. So that must be why they can take a loss on this, because you got to think a lot of these drivers or students are going to come in, they're going to get their training, which is a 4-week class, and it's not driving on the road. This is a 4-week class like a regular truck driving school where you just show up at their terminals and go to this driving academy. You get paid 8 hours a day to do it. And it's probably more money than, I think it's like $17 an hour or something like that, which is probably more than what a lot of people are making at fast food and in factories, things like that. And I thought, well, okay, that's crazy enough. But one article on their website said that they quoted a driver who went through there, and it said he actually got paid per diem. So he gets paid $66 per day to eat, and he gets they pay for hotels if you live too far away from the terminal to drive, and they pay for a rental car for you to get there. And I'm just like, what? You can see why I'm a little confused at this. They're offering all of this, 4 weeks of paid school, plus a lined up job if you want it. And this is a union job, so it pays well. And car, per diem for food, and paying you an hourly wage to learn. They're basically paying you to get a lifetime skill. And you're not tied to the company in any way. You can just go wherever you like. So if you get out and you go to any one of Yellow's companies here, which is Holland, YRC, Redaway, and New Penn. Those are all regional companies. But you can go to any of those companies and work, and you have an automatic job, or you can just get out of the school and just off on your own. Strange. But I don't really see how you can beat that deal, honestly. Getting paid to go to school and no obligation. Never heard anything like that, so you can see why I was confused. Like I said, there's a link to all of this in the show notes, so check it out if you're interested in going to truck driving school. And sorry if you just went through truck driving school and you had to pay for it. That sucks. But here you go. Now, as I did mention briefly before, Yellow has had its controversy around it. For instance, they've got that COVID loan for like $700 million, something like that. And that was brought into question. There was some Congress committee that was looking into that and saying, did you guys really qualify for this or not? So there's they've announced, or we've talked about here on the show, that they've also announced that they are going through a lot of changes that's not very popular with some people. And, so whether you want to get into that or not, the driving school, I guess you could go to the school, try the company. If you don't like it, quit, go somewhere else, I guess. So anyway, just do your research on this. Like anything, don't jump in, just on the say of what I'm saying for sure. Just do all your research. Okay. I even put a link in here to Indeed.com. They have reviews for truck driving companies, and there's in here, the reviews are all over the map, from best company I've ever worked for, paid insurance, all that crap, to this company sucks and is going in the toilet. So, just head on over here, like any review site, I guess, really. So anyway, like I said, link in the show notes to all these, and let's move on. Speaking of trucking schools, and more importantly, getting a new job, let's head over to thetrucker.com. This article is called "Put Your Best Foot Forward. Know what's on your record before applying." So the article goes on to talk about how, trucking interviews are really not like any other interview. A lot of companies that if you were a non-trucker, you'd go and you'd turn in a resume, you'd show up for a in-person interview and talk back and forth with the person. And trucking is more like you call, you ask a couple of questions, they give you an online application, or sometimes they just kind of give you an online or like a phone conversation interview and fill out some of the stuff for you. And it's just really not as involved. But they say still, if because of this, a lot of times the company won't get complete information. It takes them longer to get your application processed and stuff like that. So there's a lot of good tips in this. This is a really good article. It's very short, but some things you can do to make sure that your app doesn't get held up and that there's not any problems, and that you are aware of everything that is going on with that application. So the first thing they mention is keeping a work history. One, you don't want to leave out any jobs, because that makes you look like you're trying to leave something off because it was a bad employer or something like that. And also, if you have gaps in your employment history, that's a red flag to companies too. They always want to check that out. So I have one of these. I have a work history document on my computer, and it has all the names, the company names, addresses, phone numbers, things like that. And I keep that so I can easily, some of these websites, that you go for, to do these applications, actually give you a spot to upload a resume. So you can do that, not have to fill in, all that crap online, which always sucks because these websites are horrible, just horrible. But anyway, just be prepared for that by keeping a work history, and just keep that up to date as you go on to your next company. Because Lord knows, a lot of drivers switch to a lot of jobs, and it's hard to keep track of them all. And especially the dates that you work there. That was the hardest thing for me, to go back and figure out exactly when I worked at these places. All the other stuff I just got online, so no big deal. Address, phone number, all that stuff. So another thing you need to do to be prepared is to check your Department of Motor Vehicles. It doesn't look good if you say you got no traffic violations, but you have something on there that maybe you forgot about. Maybe it was just something mild, some small little thing, and you forgot about it. So you just don't want to look like you're trying to cover up your past. Okay. So make sure you get that. I think last time I did that, it was like $5 or something, and they'll print it out, show you what you got on your record. Just head to your DMV for that one. The next thing you're going to want to do is get signed up for the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. We've talked a lot about that on the podcast. That's clearinghouse.fmcsa.gov. .dot.gov. Just click the link on the show notes here, and you'll see to this article, and you'll see all these links in here. But in this case, if you remember right, in the past, we said, if you're not looking for a new job, you don't have to sign up for this Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. But after, I think, 2020, if you expected to get a job anywhere within the trucking industry, you are going to have to be on this, in this clearinghouse, and you have to sign up and register for that. So, or if, you're not a member of that and you're trying to get a new job, well, good luck. It ain't going to happen. So you're going to have to get signed up for that ASAP. Now, here's something I was not aware of. There's something called the Pre-Employment Screening Program. That's the PSP report. It shows your experiences at roadside inspections and other events reported by law enforcement. So, for instance, you might not have got a ticket, but if you got a warning, that's probably going to be on there. So if you get a whole bunch of warnings, even though you never got any tickets, it may not look good on you. So they're suggesting you head on over to this website here, and you can check this every year. Again, I didn't know anything about this pre-employment screening program. So there's a link. You can go and check it out. I'm going to probably do that. Well, if I remember after this podcast is over, we will see. So anyway, this is just, again, so you won't be surprised by, anything your company asks you about some incident or whatever, and you're thinking, oh, I didn't even remember that. How did they remember that? Well, they probably got this PSP report. Another thing you can do is go to hireright.com. That's HIRERIGHT.com. And that is for the very secretive DAC report, DAC report. I don't think I ever verified what DAC stood for, but this is the thing that shows all of your employment history. It's just, I did this honestly a long time ago, back when I was writing my book. I did this just so I could write about it. And I was surprised at the stuff that was on this DAC report. Now you can get a free copy of this, like say, go to hireright.com. The phone number, if you want to do it that way, is 866-521-6995. Again, all of this is right there in the show notes. So if you ever were going to click on a link in a show note, this is the one to do it, because there's lots of links in here. Thanks to Cliff Abbott for writing this article. This was really, really good and very, very informative. So go check this one out at thetrucker.com. That way you're not blindsided at your next job interview to get your next trucking job. Cool beans. Next. Hey, one way to make sure you get that new job? Don't fail a drug test. Found this one on freightwaves.com. Truckers' positive drug tests up 18% in 2022. Wow. Yeah, of course, the big one here is marijuana. Those violations went up 31%. Boy, this article does remind us that federal law preempts state law when it comes to both medicinal and recreational marijuana by commercial drivers. So don't think just because your state allows it that you are okay to use this stuff, or even unregulated CBD stuff, but got to be very careful with that too. So these numbers are way up. Obviously, they said the only decreases they saw were for hydrocodone and heroin. So, hey, that's good, right? Less drivers on heroin. I'm all for that. Now, I found another article related to this on ttnews.com. That's transport topics. And this one actually had some stats in it that were very interesting. It says, as of January 4th, there were 166,000 drivers who failed at least one drug test, and 91,000 of them have yet to report to enroll in the return to work process, which is, the process where you have to go through the drug rehab and all that stuff and the counseling before you can get your license back and get back on the road. So, man, that's bad. Again, I don't understand anyone who would put a drug above their livelihood and their career. But then again, I've never been addicted to drugs. But then again, they say marijuana is not addictive. So, I think it's just truckers wanting to smoke some reefer, maybe. Yeah. If you want to do reefer, go to work for a refrigerated company. That's what I say. Anyway, I've got links to both of these articles in the show notes. Just go check it out and don't do drugs. Okay? Thanks. Okay, this one ought to go quick. Found it on cdllife.com. FMCSA revokes a second ELD this week. Users should switch to paper logs. Okay. So on January 31st, the FMCSA removed ELD1 brand. It's called ELD1, one is all spelled out. And on February 3rd, they said that the nationwide ELD was also revoked. Both of these for failing to meet technical specifications. So the FMCSA's instructions, if you have one of these devices, is first, discontinue using the revoked device and revert to paper logs or logging software to record your hours of service. And secondly, obviously, replace the revoked device with a compliant ELD from the registered devices list. And there's a link to the registered devices so you can go and see which ones are approved. Now, you'd think if it's on the shelf, it would probably be approved, but hey, you never know. So there are grace periods involved with these. The ELD 1, you have until April 1st to get compliant, and the nationwide ELD, you have until April the 4th. So as we talked about in the opening of the show, don't procrastinate. It never works out well. Just go ahead and get on a new device, okay? CDLlife.com for that one. All right, I think we've already discussed some of these states and their speed limit changes, but I'm just going to cover again because I don't remember which ones we covered and which ones we didn't. Right now, this is an article on landline.media, and there are 5 states that are making some speed limit changes. The first is Indiana, and I think we have already talked about this one. They're wanting to eliminate the speed gap between cars and trucks. Right now, cars go 70, trucks go 65. So they're wanting to get rid of that. Keep in mind, all of these are just bills right now. They are not, they're not done yet. So be careful. Just watch your speed limit signs. New York State is saying that right now they have 65 mile an hour speed limits on most interstate highways and limited access roads, and they want to bump those speeds up to 70 for both cars and trucks. That's cool. North Dakota already has 75 mile an hour speed limits on interstates 29 and 94, but their 4-lane divided highways are set at 70 and 2-lane highways are at 65. Well, this new bill for North Dakota would authorize vehicles to travel 80 mile an hour on interstates. Wow. Of course, that's not up to the 85 yet of West Texas and parts of Utah that I'm aware of. If there's anything higher than 80 at this point, please let me know because I'm not traveling the country like I used to. Just email me, truckerdump@gmail.com. Truckerdump@gmail.com. Sorry for saying that so fast. I think Cece's wearing off on me. Boy, that girl talks fast. Next up, I think we talked about South Carolina before. This was actually for the minimum speed limit. They wanted to raise it from 45 to 50 mile an hour, so yeah, okay, whatever. And I think we actually talked about West Virginia here too, but I will, I'll remind you of this one too. Right now, their interstate speed limits range from 70 to 75, and they want to jump theirs up to 80 mile an hour also. Interesting. West Virginia's got some pretty curvy stuff in there. That's going to be interesting to know if they're like 80 mile an hour down 77, all those curves and hills and stuff. Well, I'm sure they'll do, location appropriate. But anyway, if you want the details on this stuff, check it out, landline.media. Okay, this next one is also on landline.media, and I'm going to be real quick about this one. 4 states pursue expanded move over rules for all road users. Now, lots of little details in this about what's currently allowed and what you have to scoot over for and what you don't have. Well, doesn't say what you don't have to scoot over for, but the things that you do have to scoot over for, and maybe something that they're expanding out to maybe not just emergency vehicles, but maybe utility vehicles, construction vehicles, things like that. These specifically are for Montana, New York, North Dakota, and Virginia. But I am just going to come out and say, if something is on the shoulder, scoot the heck over. I talked about this a lot in episode 185, Scoot Over and Fix It Now, where I experienced a breakdown and most of the trucks didn't scoot over, and it was kind of disheartening, honestly. We have an epidemic. I'm going to go off again. I'm getting ready to. We have an epidemic in this country right now, in the U.S., for pulling over on the shoulder of the road when it's not necessary. Now, emergency vehicles, construction vehicles, cleaning up roadkill, whatever, that's all fine. But if you are parked on the shoulder of the road and you don't need to be there, knock it off, get back on the road, get moving. And do us all a favor. Actually look before you get back on the road. I talked to a driver at my company the other night, and he had been off work for many, many months. And come to find out, he was in that exact situation. He had a truck on his left. He was in the right-hand lane, and there was a semi on the shoulder. And it was very dark, and he didn't kind of see him until he got up on it. He was trying to slow down a little bit to scoot over, but he, one of those situations where you can't get scooted over in time because you got a truck or another vehicle beside you on your left. And guess what? The guy on the shoulder, hard left turn to get on the interstate. No signal, no nothing. He basically just T-boned the tractor. He was out of commission for quite a while, really busted his pelvis up good. And I just don't understand that. Again, I don't want to be racist, but, isn't that the way they always start out when they say racist? But it seems to be, I think it's mostly a foreigner thing. We didn't have this many problems when most truckers were native born, but, we've got a lot of these Indian and Arab truckers coming over here, and fine, you're welcome, but you got to do things right. Okay. You can't, this is America. It's not, every man for himself like it is over in these other countries where you just drive like a maniac and everybody's expected to get out of your way. Here in America, don't do that. Okay. The shoulder of the road is no place to take your 30-minute break. If you can't plan better than that, you should get out of trucking. Okay. Just don't push it that far. If you need to fix a sandwich, that's not for the shoulder. If you want to take a nap, that's not for the shoulder. And certainly if you're taking a 10-hour break on the side of the road, man, I hope the cops nail you. And I hope when they come knocking on your door, you got sleepies in your eyes so they know you're back there sleeping. And I hope you get a ticket. Okay, rant over. In short, just be careful. As this article points out, states are starting to crack down on this and put more enhanced rules in place. And if you don't scoot over, you will get a ticket. Good. Landline.media. All right, let's stick with Landline.media to learn what 5 more states are doing about truck platooning. Now, we've talked about truck platooning in the past. It kind of, we didn't talk about it for a long time, but it seems to be coming back into favor. This is the concept of where 2 trucks are following each other very closely, and they are relaying information back and forth with a computer, and being so close together cuts down on drag, from aerodynamics and things like that, and make your fuel economy better. And ultimately, they would like this to be like one driver in the lead vehicle and no driver in the second vehicle. So anyway, I'm not going to go into each one of these, but we're talking about Indiana, Kentucky, Mississippi, Missouri, and Tennessee. And basically, most of these rules are designed these are all just bills, to be looked at to change the rules of the state because, platooning involves tailgating basically. And so they have to make these special rules that allow these trucks to be very, very close to each other. For instance, they mentioned that 300 feet or 2 seconds is about, considered to be illegal in a lot of cases. And these guidelines are just going to, these bills are going to reduce that. So, and some of them actually go on and say, how many vehicles can be in a line. Cause, platooning is not just 2 trucks. It could be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever they get up to. But right now, they're limiting it to 2 trucks in Mississippi. And there's also rules about, drivers having to be behind the wheel of both of those trucks. Now, as I've said in the past episode, I would not want to be in that second vehicle staring at the back end of a trailer all day long, trying to stay alert and not being able to see very much. And, sometimes you may only be 20 or 30 feet from that truck in front of you. No, thank you. Where's the hazard pay in that? Wow. If you remember right in a past episode, they were even talking about how one driver would be in the back vehicle asleep. Sure. No, thanks. If they're going to do this, why don't they just allow longer vehicles? Which, I know the ATA is pushing for big time, the American Trucking Association, or just, out on the interstates letting some of these trucks be pulled like 53 doubles. They allow that on a lot of turnpikes and things like that with special permits. Why not do that? I understand you can't get 253s connected with the dolly down, in downtown Chicago and things like that. But you could do that for the main part of the driving out on the interstate. I don't know why they're not pursuing that more. I mean, in this case, you still got 2 trucks. It's still pulling 2 vehicles. You're still burning fuel in both of those vehicles. I'm just not sure I understand the whole platooning thing, but they're kind of looking at it as like a stopgap until they can get, completely carbon free with the electric trucks. But as we've talked about in past episodes, good luck with that too. Yeah. Again, found this one on landline.media. On that subject, let's head over to freightwaves.com. Electric vehicles will have tough audience in LTL carriers. I have talked about this quite a bit in the past, how, these electric vehicles that they're talking about are really set up for local more than anything else, mainly because of the mileage. But another big issue is the charging, just getting these things charged. And that is the problem that they're running into with LTL carriers. Because, I work for an LTL carrier, and I can tell you, I drive my truck at night. Someone else drives it during the day, a city driver. There is no time for that thing to charge. So basically what what this article points out is if LTL carriers ever want to get on the electric vehicle bus, they just it's almost as if they're going to have to buy twice as many trucks, So when I'm driving mine at night, I park in the morning and it will sit there and charge while a city driver drives their own truck. I'm sure the city drivers would love that because everybody gets their own truck at that point, but LTL carriers are not going to do that. I don't know how they're going to figure this one out. Maybe there's something to that whole fast swap battery system that we've heard mentioned. I think I mentioned it here on the podcast before, but they are companies that are working on these fast swap systems where you could pull into a station, they could swap out the battery in like 5 minutes. That's an interesting concept, but I mean, think about how many of those you'd have to for an LTL company. It's got thousands of trucks, like UPS has got 15,000 trucks or something like that. Probably more. I don't remember. There's a lot, but again, just another challenge, for the electric vehicle to come into the trucking industry. What a surprise. For all the details on this one, if you're interested, head over to freightwaves.com. Hey, just recently we talked about some different self-driving truck trips that were made without a human on board. Well, California is taking steps to make sure that doesn't happen to them right now. CDLlife.com. Yep, they've introduced a bill that says that any vehicle over 10,000 pounds will have to have a human driver physically inside the vehicle. Right now, they allow, you don't have to have one in like smaller vehicles, for testing like cars and small box trucks and things like that. But for the big rigs, they want to make sure that there is a driver present. And that makes sense to me. For once, California, I'm on board with you on this one. So there's not much to say on that one either, except for, this is CDLlife.com. So if I'm ever going to get anyone to click a link in the show notes, it's going to be to CDLlife.com. And why is that? Because they have lots of advertisements with women with big boobs. If that don't do it, nothing will. Right, guys? Wow. Okay, head on over to CDLlife.com for all your trucking news and boobs. I can hear the evil overlord now. Men are so pathetic. She's not wrong. All right, this one ought to be quick. Landline.media. FMCSA seeks more feedback on automated driving systems. So here we are with this advanced notice of proposed rulemaking again. They always have to do this before it goes into the Federal Register to be commented on. Now, they've already done this once back in 2019, but they are asking for comments again. They're basically wanting feedback in 3 major areas. First is notification by motor carriers operating level 4 or 5 automated driving system equipped commercial motor vehicles. The second is oversight for remote assistance. And third is vehicle inspection and maintenance. Now, if you have comments on the way that should be done at all, you're going to want to head over here and get your comments in. This is a 45-day commenting period only. And there's a link in the show notes to go directly to that where you can comment. Public service announcement done. Let's move on. All right, next let's head to ccjdigital.com. That's Commercial Carrier Journal. And hey, they didn't piss me off this week by asking for my email 500 times. So good for them. This is probably the best article I read all week long. It's just chock full of information. If you're going to want to click on a link, this is the one to go and check out, because I'm going to hit the highlights here, but there is lots more in here that I will not cover. Lots of little details. So what are we talking about here? ATA's Spear talks congestion, driver shortage, and more at congressional hearing. Now, the ATA is, of course, American Trucking Association, and the Spear they're talking about is Chris Spear, who is the president and CEO of the ATA. Now, when I first saw this, I thought, oh, here we go, because a lot of times the ATA and groups like OOIDA, who support mainly owner-operators, don't get along. They don't agree on lots of things because OOIDA is looking out for the owner-operator, the ATA is looking out for the large fleets that they represent, and a lot of times they just don't mingle very well. And I agree with one at some point and the other group at other points. And sometimes I just wish they would just look at things from the other side. And thankfully, that is what's so great about this article, is it looks like Chris Spears actually did this, and he's speaking for the entire trucking industry, not just for his organization. So good for him on that one. So there were 5 big topics that he covered in here. The first was congestion, and Spear took them to task over what they're planning on doing. First off, he pointed out that although trucks are only about 4% of vehicles on the nation's roads, actually, that kind of surprised me. I figured it'd be more than that. But they say it's only 4% of vehicles on the roads are trucks, but they pay nearly half the tab into the Highway Trust Fund. Well, I'm not surprised at that at all. So he's telling this committee, make sure every dollar is spent wisely. Now, part of this infrastructure package that came up is they were planning on spending a lot of money on existing roads and bridges rather than new construction. Now, Spear points out here, quote, not only does this directly conflict with congressional intent, it does nothing to address congestion, improve safety, and reduce emissions. He goes on and says the trucking industry loses about $75 billion a year sitting in congestion, and it burns about $34 billion worth of fuel by doing so. And he goes on and says funding existing infrastructure alone does nothing to fix congestion. In fact, it makes it worse. Well, that's a good point, because if you're got a lot of road construction on the road, you actually got more truckers sitting in more traffic, burning more fuel. So good point there, Mr. Spear. Awesome. Next up, he talks about truck parking. Now, this is one of the things that OOIDA and the ATA have agreed on from the beginning, that there is definitely a lack of truck parking. And he suggested to the committee members that they just drive right outside of D.C. and have a look at any exit ramp they pass at night, and they're going to see a bunch of truckers on off ramps instead of parked in well-lit areas at truck stops like they should be. Now, this next one surprised me a little bit. He talks about the driver shortage problem, which again is part of this Drive Safe Act. They're trying to figure out how to get more drivers into the industry. Part of that is the Safe Driver Apprenticeship Pilot Program. That's getting these under 21 intrastate drivers to be able to drive all lower 48 states. This says 49 states. Huh. What's up with that? I guess it probably means all. Well, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Because I guess it makes sense. Yeah, because Alaska at least is on this continent. Hawaii is the one out there that you're not going to be driving interstate in Hawaii. So they don't really need that over there. Okay, now that makes sense. I feel better. So anyway, Spear is saying here that they overstepped their boundaries. And what he means by this is part of this new apprenticeship program is that if you are going to have an apprentice in your truck, that you have to have a driver facing camera. And he's basically just saying, hey, you're invading their space. You're asking new drivers to come into this industry, but you're also telling them you're going to violate their privacy by having a camera in their truck. Good point. So he's saying these driver-facing cameras in themselves will limit, companies being able to, some companies won't want to use those devices even. And, because their other drivers don't want them. And it's not really fair to put them in some trucks and not other trucks. And so it's likely that some of these companies just won't take advantage of this apprenticeship program, which of course does nothing to bring new drivers into the industry. Another part of this driver shortage equation is just getting more drivers from different pools, basically. And they talk specifically here about women in trucking. Only about 7.9% of truck drivers in America are women. And they, ask how they could get that up. And Spears suggested, let's go to the actual women who are doing the job and find out what their concerns are. Well, that seems like a no-brainer. That shouldn't have even had to been said, but at least they're discussing it. Women in Trucking Organization will be very happy to hear that, I'm sure. The next topic he discussed was electrification. Now, Spear, it acknowledges that everybody's going toward these zero emissions vehicles, but he says there needs to be realistic discussion about it. And he says, quote, it's not a matter of if we get to zero, but when. And we will get there, just not on the timelines being proposed in California. Yeah, we've talked about this before. California's got these major deadlines. And actually, we talked in the last episode how CARB is kind of relaxing those a little bit. So maybe that's a good first step. But anyway, he goes on just to point out all the things we've already pointed out on here. The trucks are not designed to run long miles. The batteries are not equipped for that yet. The battery technology is not there yet. We just discussed how, it's not going to work for LTL companies, which are some really large companies a lot of times. So yeah, there's just a lot going on here. And he just says we just need to slow down and take our time. But that's the way California usually does, is just plow straight forward ahead and, damn the consequences. And speaking of California, that's the last subject they addressed, is this AB5 thing out in California where they are challenging what an independent contractor is. Now, this is where I was very surprised. Chris Spear is usually, he's the head of the ATA, large fleets, okay? They ideally would love to have no owner operators whatsoever. So everybody has to be a company driver for one of these large fleets. That's typically his angle. But in this case, I was very surprised. He did not do that. And as a matter of fact, he sided with OOIDA and said, listen, there's lots of different kinds of truckers out here. Some of them want to be company drivers. Some of them want to own or lease their own trucks. Let them do what they want to do. If you want to bring more people into this industry, don't tie them down to one way. And, he also mentioned there's all this talk of, predatory lease practices and stuff like that. But he says, he just reminded them, most drivers are not forced into being independent contractors. They choose it. They want that avenue. They want some control. They don't want to just work for a paycheck. So I love the fact that we've got the head of the ATA sitting in here, and he's talking about how insane California's AB5 rule is. And he says, quote, any state like California that adopts AB5 as a model, you're going to have inability to move freight from those ports to the rest of the country. I have companies that are simply dependent on this model that cannot operate, and they cannot comply within the rules of AB5. They're going to pull out, simply not operate in California. Yep. Not surprising. I've been saying this all along. So it's going to be interesting to see how that actually unfolds and how they're going to get that California taken care of. So like I said, that's the highlights of this, but this is a really good article. I would highly suggest it. That's ccjdigital.com. And thank you to Mr. Spear for actually sticking up for the trucking industry as a whole instead of just looking out for your self-interest. Thank you. All right, this next one is just a little bit of light reading in case you are an owner-operator or an independent contractor or, well, heck, I guess anybody who buys insurance for your vehicles. I guess so this does apply to passenger vehicles too. But anyway, this is an article on overdriveonline.com called The Most Underappreciated Insurance Coverage in All of Trucking. And what they're talking about here is what's called UM or UIM, which stands for uninsured motorist and underinsured motorist. And he goes into detail. The writer of this, Joel Baker, goes into detail about a friend of his who was in an accident, and it ended up killing his wife who was in the truck with him. And this was a situation where a car caused the vehicle to crash, his truck to crash, and the car drove off. So there was no insurance. And he got in a pickle because of this, because as the article points out, they talked to some insurance people, and they say usually when truckers come in, or anybody for that matter, they say, just give me the minimum of what I need. And this article is pointing out that maybe that is not the best case scenario. Maybe you want to spend just a little bit. I guess because this so rarely happens where somebody doesn't have any insurance, that the premiums are not super high to add on some extra, caps, some extra money for that. So yeah, I don't know. If you are an owner operator, let me know what you think about this uninsured motorist coverage. Go over here and check out this article, read it, and, let me know what your thoughts are on that. Because, man, it goes into all of these expenses, how you get up to, 253, 300,000, even 500,000. That's just not covered because they don't have insurance. And as I'm looking through this article, I see the dollar here. I was talking about how it's a good bang for your buck. They said, they got a quote for $100,000 extra worth of UM and UIM coverage, quoted at $87 for the entire year. That's nothing if you're a business owner. Okay. So you might consider tacking that on, maybe even going up a couple $100,000. This says, let's see, for $1 million of this kind of coverage, it's $210 an entire year. Heck, you could probably just cut out Starbucks and get with that. Okay, man. So anyway, I'm just found this interesting and thought if you are buying your own insurance for your vehicle, you probably might want to go over and check this out and see what it's all about, and just maybe reconsider the kind of coverage you're getting for your vehicles. Okay. Found that one on overdriveonline.com. Like I said, light reading. And lastly, let's talk about possibly the worst trucker ever. Let's head over to cdllife.com and check this one out. Trucker slapped with 24 charges following 3 traffic stops in 24 hours. Okay, that pretty much sums it up. But this happened in Canada, started in Ontario. Let's see where it went. I think all of this happened in Ontario, but it was all in the same day. First time he got pulled over was at 10 a.m. Somebody had reported him driving oddly, swerving on the road. Then again later, he got pulled over at 12:30 a.m. and again at 7:40 a.m. Wow. So let me read off this list here. 3 counts of careless driving, 3 counts of driver failing to surrender license, 2 counts of failing to surrender inspection schedule, 2 counts failing to enter defect in daily inspection report. Oh, so he had something wrong with his truck too. Improperly driving a commercial motor vehicle with a minor defect in it. Unnecessary slow driving. 2 counts of failing to maintain daily log, failing to take 10 hours off in a day, exceeding 13 hours drive time without 8 hours off, driving after 14 hours on duty without 8 hours off, driving after 16 hours since last break without 8 hours off. Wow. Failing to surrender the daily log. Okay, so I guess he wouldn't give the log either, so they had to take it from him forcibly, I guess. Interesting. Driver in possession of more than one daily log. Of course he was. Failing to keep record of duty status, failing to manually input information into ELD, and entering inaccurate information in the record. I guess finally at the 3rd stop, the vehicle was towed and impounded. Thank God. What took so long? I mean, the first one, probably bad enough, but second and then the 3rd, good Lord. I hope they really looked at him, gave him some drug tests and stuff like that, because man, that is messed up. And it says here in this article that they even added on more charges to him once they went into further investigation. Yowza. Well, so here's your goal for the week. Just drive better than this guy. I don't know what he was doing, but how do you get pulled over 3 times in the same day? And boy, you'd think the cops would be all up in his schnoz just trying to figure stuff out and why he's driving the way he is and why he keeps getting reported. Crazy stuff. Well, I thought I'd leave you off with a fun one there. Well, like I said, this is a screaming long episode already. So let's just get on with the feedback, shall we?
Hey, yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
Okay, Maverick, I would say your real name if I knew it, but your profile in the Trucker Dump Slack group doesn't actually say what it is. It just calls you Maverick. I don't know. Maybe that's your real name. Anyway, Maverick writes in to tell us about the Canadian vaccine mandate. We had talked about the trucker convoy, the Freedom Convoy, and, well, nothing actually ended up happening from that. There was nothing whatsoever. As, you know, cops were ready for it, but nothing happened. So anyway, I had some questions as to why they were protesting at all, if the vaccine mandates were still in effect. And Maverick writes, mandates are over in Canada, have been for a while now. The only mandate left is entering the U.S., but it doesn't appear that CBP, is that the Border Patrol? Yeah, Canadian Border Patrol, is actually doing a lot of checking on the northern border. Okay, well, that's good to know. I guess that makes sense why there wasn't a big freedom convoy this year, because Canada's finally lightening up on this stuff, kind of like the U.S. is. Good for that. Good for all of us, really. And thanks for that, Maverick. Thanks for the update. All right, next up, we're going to hear from Matt McKellar. He goes by the name Mountain Matt in the Trucker Dump Slack group. This is about roundabouts. We had talked about those roundabout rules that were going into effect that would let truckers, these were bills in some different states that they were going to allow truckers to use up 2 full lanes of these and give them the right of way, basically. And I was asking what your opinions are on roundabouts, and Matt answered. He writes, I don't mind roundabouts as long as they're actually made big enough for trucks. Many are not. That's very true. That is very true. Thankfully, the ones that are right outside of industrial parks are usually big enough. And Ben Dickens de Goose, did I say that right, Ben? I probably didn't. Thankfully, he just goes by Goose in the Trucker Dump Slack group. He writes, regarding roundabouts, we have heaps of them over here, too many. For the record, Goose is from Australia. He said the rules here used to be to give way to your right hand, but they changed it to give ways to vehicles already in the roundabout. The idea was that if you have a 150,000-pound B double trying to enter a roundabout, you don't have to wait for every clown that approaches the roundabout at 60 miles an hour. Unfortunately, people in general are pretty stupid and don't understand road rules. Okay, well, I'm not going to argue with you on that one for sure. Like I was saying in the episode, I kind of like roundabouts as long as everybody knows what they're doing. But one person comes in and cocks it up and, well, you're screwed. The whole thing just goes to hell in a handbasket. All right. Well, thanks to Mountain Matt and Goose for your comments on roundabouts. Appreciate it. Oh my, I'm getting too used to touch devices. I just reached up on my computer screen for the first time ever and tried to scroll. That's not good. Get it together, Todd. Speaking of getting it together, let's hear Dave Wiedemann make fun of me. Dave goes by the name Mohican in the Trucker Dump Slack group. Actually, I'm sitting here looking at Dave's profile picture and he's laughing, and I'm picturing that he's laughing at me right now. So he writes, Hey, Todd. In episode 186, you mentioned Tesla was building a Tesla semi-specific truck shop in Nevada. Here we go. I'm going to say this made. Oh, wow. You slipped and said Nevada as Nevada, which you stated it was a town in Missouri. I'd never heard of that town or that pronunciation, but Wikipedia says that's how it's pronounced. Yes, it is. I at least know that, Dave. He goes on and says, but then I had to laugh as you kept pronouncing the name of the Silver State in 2 different ways. Nevada, wrong, And the correct way, Nevada. No. Nevada. Yeah, there we go. The A's have the same vowel as the A's in Montana. Nevada. Montana. Nevada. Nevada. Okay, there we go. I live in Iowa, but I was born in nearby Nevada. Did I say it right, Dave? Only those east of the Mississippi pronounce it as Nevada. And for Nevada, did I say it right? Nevada locals? No, I said it wrong again. Damn it. For Nevada locals, no, I said it wrong again. Nevada. For Nevada locals, it's I'm so confused right now. Nevada, Nevada, and Nevada. Nevada. So it's Nevada? Is that right? Yeah, Nevada. Add. Okay. Well, there you go, Dave, Driver Dave. Remember how you said you wanted me to leave all the bloopers in? Well, there you go. See how long this podcast would be if I did that? Nevada. Okay. All right. So for Nevada locals, wow, I did it again. Nevada, Nevada locals. It's a sure way to tell who's not from there. Anyway, now you know. I'm not sure why half the country can pronounce a state name wrong. It would be like confidently pronouncing Massachusetts as Massachusetts. Well, I can get Massachusetts. That one's clear. He says, anyway, I like your obsession with quality and the quiet audio. On the podcast, your voice is clear and easy to hear, although not understand clearly. Probably because you really work at reducing mic noise. Use a good mic, etc. Yeah. He says, well, it's not likely we'd be able to hear most background noise. The hotel housekeeping staff in the hallway or trucks in a nearby freeway. Yeah. It's nice that you're so careful about your recording quality. So thanks. Sometimes when you mix in voice recordings or have a guest host, the volume level isn't the same and the audio quality makes it hard to hear for what that's worth. Thanks again for all the work you put into the podcast. I really enjoy listening. Thank you, Mohican. I really appreciate you listening. And you know, we're not going to be able to talk about sound quality without me talking about sound quality, right? That's just the thing we do here on the Trucker Dump podcast. Well, I do. You probably skip forward at this point, but regardless. So you're talking about guest hosting or audio, like audio clips and how they sound a bit different. I am very careful with that and I try my best. My software actually levels this. Those are on two separate tracks. I have my own track and then I put all that other stuff on a guest track and it levels it out to the best of its ability. But here's the problem. This is an audio geek thing. So like I say, if you're not interested, just go right ahead. But two voices can be at the same level of audio, like volume, but they're not going to sound the same. I know that sounds weird, but because of the different situations you're in, maybe there's more reverb or something, or just maybe the person's voice is different, or the way it's recorded and the device it's recorded in, it's going to sound different, even though they are technically the same level. So I do my best, and this software does a pretty good job. So if it's a little low, I realize sometimes it is, and I try to go in there and tweak it a little bit, but the software just takes over and says, nope, we've got this, and if I could do it all manually, but good Lord, that would take a long time. So I'm just going to leave it the way it is. I'm sorry if it doesn't work sometimes. And if you get to a guest clip or something like that, just crank it up a little bit on your phone or wherever you're listening. So anyway, thank you, Dave, for this comment. I really appreciate it. I do have one more bit of listener feedback, but quite honestly, it's being held ransom. That is Trevor's audio clip for his his incident he got into. This is Trevor Dunkel, who goes by the name Kool-Aid in the Trucker Dump Slack group. And he sent this long thing to me. And I was like, think I could get you to do that on audio. And he has not responded to me yet. So I think he's just ignoring me, but I'm going to hold out and see if I can get him to record an audio clip of this. Come on, Trevor, get with it. All right. Well, I knew this was going to be a very long episode, and it was. At this moment, I'm at the recording mark of about an hour and 30 minutes. I will edit that down, of course, a bit. So probably be down to what? I don't know, hour 20. I guess that's not super long. But anyway, I can't think of anything else I want to talk about, which is honestly amazing. But just let me remind you that if you have any news story you would like to be discussed or any comment you want to make about the show, any trucker grub segment, which is, your favorite place to eat that you can get to in a truck. Of course, that's audio only, but send all of that stuff into me at truckerdump@gmail.com. I am pretty much caught up on my feedbacks. I think I have one more from CC. CC, I think you owe me another recording, don't you? Didn't you say you were going to do that? It was on, let's see, what was that on? Oh, it was about automatic transmissions. It starts out with automatic transmissions. So hopefully I won't have to ask Cece again, like I'm having to do with Kool-Aid here. Cece will probably get right on it. And I do have another little bit of email from Mokihikin next episode. But other than that, I am all caught up. So if you'd like to have your voice heard on the episode, please write in truckerdump@gmail.com. I prefer audio clips, of course, but I will take a simple text email as well. But I have to warn you, if you're in the Trucker Dump Slack group, and I think I know you pretty well, I'm going to dog you for some audio. Consider yourself dog, Trevor. All right. Well, I hope you all have a safe week out there. Be careful in all this bad weather and this cold, cold, cold temperatures. Make sure you're all stocked up in the truck and you've got all the crap you need. I know it's generic and everybody says it. Oh, make sure you have extra water and blankets and all that stuff. But make sure you have extra water and blankets and all that stuff. Okay. For Pete's sake, just throw some canned soup in there and open it up and eat it cold if you absolutely have to, because, I live on soup. So you can do it too. So with that, I guess we should just get out of here. Hopefully this episode will be released on Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, like always. But it is a possibility that I get a home load tonight, which is Friday, and I would be back in the same situation where I'm being ordered to go to sleep by the evil overlord. And Lord knows you don't want to disobey an order from the evil overlord. That never ends well. So hopefully we'll get that out tomorrow morning or afternoon and not early Sunday AM like before. All right, let's get. Well, I'm lazy, so I still don't have that Blue Parrot affiliate program set up yet, which also means there's no point in updating my website to show you how you can help the show through donations or purchases. So instead of groveling for money again, how about I remind you of the free stuff available at abouttruckdriving.com. There's PDFs on how to axle out a load and winter driver heater settings based on the type of winter weather you're in. And perhaps coolest is you can download the full versions of both the Trucker Dump intro and outro songs, courtesy of a now defunct band, Walking on Einstein. I went to school with the drummer and the bassist. Really cool guys and great songs. Well, thanks for listening and following the show. So until next time, drive safe and stay out of my way. The news includes American Trucking Association CEO discussing with Congress about trucking's biggest issues. That's awful. That's a bad sentence. Bad. Hey, you know how we've talked on the podcast about how these automated trucks, or these self-driving trucks, I should say, well, same thing. Yeesh. I'll tell you how to. I'll point you to an article that shows you how you can. I'll point you to an article on how to make sure you have the best chance to get that next trucking job. I'll point you to an article that'll tell you how. I'll point you to an article I'll point you to an article that will help. I'll point you to an article that will help you get the